Okay, you're in for a real treat, ladies and gentlemen, when you meet Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo. She's been here for this afternoon, and we've really gotten to know each other. I've gotten a little, green room psychology, and I appreciate it. She is a licensed practicing clinical psychologist and physical therapist, international keynote speaker, and best-selling author who serves as a life coach for individuals and Fortune 500 executives. Through her research-based True Success formula, she helps clients break through mental barriers to achieve life goals, such as improving confidence, we've been talking about that one, coping with the pressures of competition, managing emotions, I'm so close to crying on CNN these days, I need that one, overcoming setbacks, and raising purpose-driven children. Not only has she contributed to many articles in a variety of respected publications, she's also considered America's most interviewed psychologist with more than 100 radio and TV appearances. NBA star Shaquille O'Neal has famously called her head coach for happiness. So please watch this quick video.
Clinical psychologist Elizabeth Lombardo has written Better Than Perfect. Hey, how are you?
So nice to see you again.
Good to be back.
Thank you to Dr. Lombardo.
Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo.
It's easier to type than to talk, and you say different things when you're typing, when you're not looking at someone face to face than you ever would if you were looking at them. Definitely.
I agree with that.
Post-election stress disorder is a real phenomenon that a lot of people are experiencing right now.
You're clapping.
Applauding her? No, that was so wonderful.
Why is calm the new happy?
Calm is the new happy because as we get older, our definition of happiness actually changes.
Happiness hangovers, that's a real thing.
It's a real thing. So there, we anticipate events and we're so excited about it and the buildup is great and then they happen and it's, now what? Research shows that when we have positive relationships, we actually live longer. So it's a gift for yourself. Take accountability for what you did so that you can move on.
Elizabeth Lombardo, good tips. Thank you so much.
Please welcome Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo.
Okay, Elizabeth, do not mess this up. This is the Women's Leadership Conference. This is a huge deal. What if I forget what I'm supposed to say? What if I trip on stage? Oof, I should not have had that cookie during break. I'm feeling a little bit bloated. I wonder what I should have for dinner tonight. Seriously, Elizabeth, stop it. Focus. Do not mess this up.
Is this mic on? That inner voice. That inner critic. Here's the deal. Oh, we all have one. Yeah, I don't care if you're the CEO in entry-level position. We all have an inner voice that sometimes says, you suck. You are in way over your head. Who do you think you are? And it's our inner voice, our inner critic that really determines everything in our lives, right? It's our inner voice that determines how we feel. Because if your inner voice is saying, you're a loser, it's going to elicit different emotions than I believe in you. It's your inner voice that determines your actions. There's no way you're going to get that job promotion. Don't even try. It's going to elicit different behaviors than, hey, let's give it a try. At least it'll be a learning experience. And it's our inner voice that determines how effective of a leader you are. Today we're going to talk about leadership from the inside out. From the inside out, because what goes on up here impacts everything that goes on out here. So you are at a women's leadership conference. So right? It's good? You having fun? So my question to you is this. What is leadership? What is leadership? Well, considering I have the microphone, I'm going to share with you my definition of leadership. My definition of leadership is bringing out the best in people so that you can work towards a common goal. Right? Bringing out the best in people so you can work towards a common goal. And first and foremost, you lead yourself. Every single day, you lead yourself. You may lead people in your personal life, right? Maybe it's your family, your friends, people in the community. And then you can be a leader at work. So we're going to talk about how to be a great leader from the inside out. But first, let's talk about some components of effective leadership. Leaders have nothing to do with organizational charts. right? It's different from a manager or a director. And in fact, it doesn't matter where you are in the hierarchy, you can be a great leader. I used to be a physical therapist, and when I worked at a physical therapy gym, there was a PT tech there, and he'd worked there for a couple of decades. And I assure you, on the hierarchical chart, he wasn't very high, but he was the leader. And every day before we started, before people's coffee, started kicking in, he would get us going. And if someone was sitting down, kind of doodling off and not doing what they're supposed to do, all we needed was a look from this guy. And we got motivated to do what we were supposed to do. He was a leader, but he wasn't our boss. Leadership is born. How many of you have ever heard that? Great leaders are born. I'm sorry, this is the participator part of my talk. Has anyone ever heard of that? Yes, okay, 3 people have. So there's this concept that leaders are born. I don't know, some of them are, I say, but we can all learn how to be great leaders. Right? Perhaps you've seen videos of 2 or 3-year-old prodigies, right, playing the piano, and they're amazing. They were born with those gifts. But the beauty is, regardless of what you're born with, you can be an even stronger leader. When we think of components of effective leadership, you've learned a lot about them, right? You've learned some really great skills, and they all come from within. Whether it's confidence, putting yourself out there, being resilient, not being afraid to fail, all of these start from within. And what we want to do today is really start to learn these skills so that they become internalized. Right? This is a picture of my grandmother. And I love this picture because she was a little batty. She was a mental health nurse by training. She was also an amazing piano player. You can see her fingers there. Right? And despite not having a degree from a university, she taught a course in college that she called How to Play the Piano Despite Years of Practice. How to play the piano despite years of practice. So what she would do is she would work with her students and she'd help them get rid of the habits that weren't working, right? And she'd teach them the skills that did work. And then they would practice those. And as you can imagine, if you get rid of what doesn't work, right? You learn what does work and you practice it, what happens? You literally can't help but be better. Right? I like to think that what I do is I help people be great leaders despite years of practice, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're really going to talk about rewiring your brain. Rewiring your brain. Don't worry, we're not going to do any shock therapy on you. But what we want to do is to rewire your brain. How many of you have ever been to a conference, a talk, read a book or heard a great quote and thought, oh my gosh, this is changing my life? And then life went back to its usual way. How many of you have ever experienced that, right? We all have. That's not going to happen here at the Women's Leadership Conference, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to rewire your brain, okay? And we're going to do that by learning the concepts, getting rid of what doesn't work, and then practicing it. Every single thought you have is just a series of nerves firing in a certain pattern, right? So thought A, the nerves are firing in this pattern. Thought B, they're firing in this pattern. Right? It's the same thing with our actions. In order for me to hop on over here in my pink shoes, nerves have to fire in a certain pattern. Now, think about the first time you got behind the wheel of a car to learn to drive. Right? If you're anything like me, you're like, oh, where do my hands go? Right? How much do I turn the steering wheel? Or as my 15-year-old who's learning how to drive right now asked me the other day, she said, Mom, which one's the brake? Which is an excellent thing to know when you're learning to drive. But your mind is consumed, right, with all of this stuff when you're learning how to drive. My guess, though, is that now when you get behind the wheel of the car, you're not thinking, oh, how much pressure do I put on the accelerator? Right? You're thinking about what song is on the radio, right? Or who you're talking to in your Bluetooth, or where you're going to stop and get a jolt of caffeine, right? And the reason is because your brain has literally been rewired. That has become automatic for you. So our goal for you today is to really start the rewiring process. And just like you did not learn how to drive in one day, it takes more than one time to learn this. So before we finish today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer you a gift. And this will be a gift that will allow you to continue this process in just a few moments a day, right? It's not about sitting in meditation for 90 minutes every day. It's a couple minutes a day that will allow you to continue to practice these skills so that they can become your automatic. Now, another component of leadership is the importance of modeling. And I don't mean walking down the runway, you know. What I mean is not just learning up here, right? Leadership starts from the inside out. So we want to rewire our brain, but we also want to show what it means to be a leader, right? Not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And we know from the research that people learn a lot more from you when you do what you want them to do, as opposed to when you tell them what you want them to do. I had an experience several years ago that really pointed this out to me. So my youngest daughter is 13 years old. You can say a prayer for me, that's fine. When she was in second grade, I went to her classroom for a Valentine's Day party. You know, in second grade, they have parties for everything. And I went in, and when I went into the classroom, her name is Grace, and Grace was doing a little craft over on the side. And her teacher, Mrs. Constantino, pulled me aside. Now, Grace at the time had short, bright blonde hair, and she always had a pink bow in her hair, and she did not have her two front teeth. So she smiled, a toothless smile, really, really cute. So as I walk in and Mrs. Constantino pulls me aside, she says, I have something I want to tell you about Grace. So in all fairness, I'm thinking she's going to talk about a cute little picture she drew or how she helped a friend, but this is what she told me. The other day, we were working on rhyming words. We started with bat, baseball bat, rhyming with baseball bat. And then the next word was mitt, as in baseball mitt. Grace raised her hand so proudly and wanted to offer a word that rhymes with mitt. Mrs. Constantino said, yes, Grace. And Grace so proudly said, excrement. Except it wasn't excrement, it was the word that means excrement but rhymes with mitt. You got that one? Everyone got it? So Mrs. Constantino is assured that Grace Lombardo would not say this word. So she asks her again, I'm sorry, Grace, what did you say? Excrement. Mrs. Constantino is thinking, okay, I must not be hearing her. Grace, use it in a sentence, please. Excrement, I forgot my purse. Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, had she said anything other than purse, keys, jacket, shoes, bag, I don't care what it was, I would have blamed it on my husband. But I got nothing here, right? Yes, I am a parenting expert, just so you know. Okay, so the importance of modeling. We want to practice what we're preaching. So when we talk about effective leadership, what I'd like to do is share with you how to amplify your leadership using the True Success Formula. And the True Success Formula is something that I've created after working with clients for over 2 decades. And it's really based on this notion that how society defines success, more money, job title, that kind of thing, isn't really true success. True success has 3 ingredients, and those ingredients are passion, purpose, and people. Passion, positive energy. Purpose, what is your meaning? And then people, well, we're social beings, right? And as leaders, we're interacting with people. So we're going to look at each one of these variables to really help us all be more effective leaders. So let's start with passion. Now, when I talk about passion, I'm not talking about romantic love, right? And maybe that too, but it's really about positivity. It's about being in a state of excitement. It's about loving what's going on or feeling grateful for what's going on, and at the same time, being really empowered to make things even better. When we're fueled by passion, we see the good and we want to make it even gooder. My mom's a second grade teacher. She would not like that. But you get what I'm saying, right? We're really in a state of empowerment. Now, the opposite of passion is distress. Distress. Distress is any emotion you don't want. Fear, worry, anxiety, frustration, guilt, shame, hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness. How many of you know someone who experiences distress sometimes? right? We all do. And the thing about it is when we're in a high state of distress, it's really hard to be in a state of passion too. So let's look at distress. Distress is on a continuum, right? It's not like you're either distressed or you're not. It's really on a continuum from 0 to 10. 0 is no distress at all. You just got off the massage table, right? Life is great. 10 out of 10 is overwhelmed with distress. So if you're sad, it's crying, but not like cute little tears. It's like snot coming out of your nose crying, right? If you're at a 10 out of 10 anger, you're yelling or throwing something or have the proverbial steam coming out of your ears. Now, hopefully, we don't spend a whole lot of time at 10, right? And we may not be at 0 all that often either. But right now, just where you are within your own mind, ask yourself, what level of distress am I right now? How about when you first wake up in the morning? Or when you first get to work? Or when you interact with that certain person in your life? Yeah. Or when you go home. For some people, distress decreases. For some people, second job starts, right? So it increases. How about when your head hits the pillow? How many of you have ever been exhausted? All you want to do is go to sleep, and as soon as your head hits the pillow, that's when your mind starts racing, right? That distress takes over. And you may notice that your distress level fluctuates throughout the day. It fluctuates throughout the day. And the reason why it's really important is because when you are at a low level of distress, you can be more in a state of passion. And when you're at a low level of distress, you're using more of your frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe is what differentiates you from other animals, right? It allows you to engage in executive functioning, perspective taking, right? Problem solving. When we're at a low level of distress, we can see all different perspectives, right? So if Carl's being kind of a jerk, it's, he's just having a bad day. But as we go up on the distress scale, our focus becomes more narrow, and we're more focused on the negative, right? And in psychology, we call that negative filtering, focusing almost exclusively on the negatives as opposed to the positives. And when we're in this red zone of a 7 or higher, we tend to focus on what's wrong. What Carl was doing when we were at a 0 that didn't bother us, now we want to kill him, right? Yeah. And there's a biological reason for this shift. Because when we're in the red zone at a 7 out of 10 or higher, we're using more of our limbic system. And your limbic system is your fight or flight. It's emotional reasoning. We tend to see things more in a negative way. I always tell my coaching clients, when you are in a red zone, right, at a 7 out of 10 or higher, don't let anything out of your mouth, because that's when we say things we later regret. And don't put anything in your mouth, because that's when we tend to consume things we later regret. Turn to the person next to you and say, get out of the red zone! That feels good, doesn't it? So when we're in the red zone, we tend to, people are very excited about the red zone. I'm glad about that. When we're in the red zone, we tend to be in a place of victim. We're kind of stuck, and there's nothing we can do. It makes me think of this video.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? Help! I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is there?
What do you think was motivating these 2 individuals? Passion or distress? Yeah, right? It's so easy to see what they needed to do. And when we're in a place of distress, we feel stuck. If they had been in a place of passion, what would they have done? Taken the 5 steps up, right? If you could stick a microphone in the brain of these two individuals, what kinds of things might you have heard? I'm stuck, there's nothing I can do, right? That inner critic was taking over and preventing them from doing what needed to be done. So my question to you is this: what increases your inner critic? What increases your inner critic? Maybe certain people, mother-in-laws, certain people maybe, did I say that out loud? Sorry. Certain people at work, right? Certain people in your life. If it's the person sitting next to you, please don't say their name out loud because we don't have time for therapy here. Specific situations can increase our inner critic, right? How many of you, when you're going to a networking event, and you're going to meet all kinds of people you don't know, how many of you, that's when the inner critic comes out, right? What if no one talks to me? Right? What if I go up to someone and they walk away? That inner critic can take over. Stress, we already talked about how stress or distress really increases our inner critic. When you're in the red zone, your inner critic is so much louder. Another thing that impacts your inner critic that you may not even realize is perfectionism. Perfectionism. Now, some people think of perfectionists as people who like to have a neat junk drawer, right? Everything's in its place, all the pens are neatly aligned. The little paper clips are stacked according to size and color, right? But perfectionism is much broader than that. Perfectionism, very simply, is an all or nothing mentality. Something's perfect or it's a failure, right? It's right or everything else is wrong. It's the way that I think things should be, or obviously, everything else is wrong. Right? Now, you may not associate yourself with perfectionism, so we're going to have a little pop quiz to see if you can relate to this. And the diehard perfectionists are like, I better get an A on this quiz. It's okay. Scenario number 1, you're giving a presentation. It may be in front of a crowd, it could even be one-on-one. And afterwards, all you can do is think about that one little mistake you made. Right? Maybe you flubbed up over your words, or your response wasn't as eloquent as you would have liked. How many of you do that? Replay over and over and over. Yeah, I call that pressing on a bruise. You ever press on a bruise? It doesn't feel good. One mistake, it was horrible. Perfectionism. Scenario number 2, you're crafting an email to someone important, your boss's boss, an important customer, or potential client. And it takes you 27 minutes to write something that should take 93 seconds. Or maybe for you, the perfectionism comes in the role of your personal leadership. I had one cookie and messed up my diet. I might as well have the whole plate. All or nothing, right? Perfect or failure, perfect or forget it. When we are being fueled by perfectionism, it prevents us from being in a place of passion. And it really interferes with effective leadership. So just a couple points. Procrastination. How many of you know someone who procrastinates? Perhaps rather intimately, right? Because what are we thinking? Oh, I don't know how to do it. I'm not even going to start. Or it's going to be so awful. I'm not even going to start. Micromanaging. How many of you ever worked for a micromanager? On top of everything. Perfectionism. Great example of perfectionism. Judgment. What goes on up here impacts everything that goes on out here. When we have our inner critic that is judging ourselves, we can't help but judge other people. And here's the thing, great leaders don't judge. Discernment, yes. Feedback, yes. But judging, they're not doing a good job, they're bad. It's not helpful. Giving up. New Year's resolutions, such a great example of how perfectionistic our society is. Right? January 1st comes, I'm giving up all alcohol, all sugar, and I'm going to exercise every day. Then January 2nd comes. And we just give up. Risk aversion. I know you've been talking about risk aversion, the importance of putting yourself out there. Innovation, change, growth cannot happen unless you put yourself out there. Calculated risk for yourself and for the people that you lead. But you can't do that when you're in a state of perfectionism. Promotion. How many of you have heard the research, right? For men, they meet 50, 60% of the criteria for promotion. What do? They go for it. Women, what do we wait for? 100%. Let me ask you a question. Before you applied to college, or if you didn't go to college, before you would apply to college, would you do the following? Before applying to college, look at the course catalog and pick out every single course you might take. And before applying, you pull out the syllabus of every single course that you might take. And then you learn everything that's on the syllabus before you ever apply to college. How many people would do that? And then when you go to college to learn, right? To grow, to stretch into something new. Well, my friends, guess what a promotion is? It's an opportunity to grow and learn and to stretch into something new. If you're already 100% confident on being able to do that next promotion, you know what? That's the wrong promotion for you. You need to go up one. Stress, perfectionism is all about stress. And then perfectionism impacts our happiness. I wrote a book about happiness, and happiness is it's an interesting entity. I go around actually teaching happiness at work. And the reason is because there's a real bottom line for happiness. Happier employees have an increase of productivity by 31%, and an increase in sales by 37%. What would that do for you, for your team, for your company, if you had an increase in sales by 37%? It's really significant. So when we have this perfectionism, we can't be as happy as we want to be. Now, tell a perfectionist something doesn't have to be perfect, and this is what they'll say. I know. Yeah, no, you know. And this is what they'll think. Yes, it does. And here's why. Remember, a perfectionist thinks in all or nothing terms. So it's either perfect or it's a failure. And if it's a failure, then I'm a failure. And it's that personalization of failure. It's the fear of failure that perpetuates perfectionism. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. I used to think that I needed my perfectionism to be successful. Right? I thought it was my perfectionism that really propelled me to get my degrees and be on stages around the globe and be on TV and all that. But it comes at a huge price. And the price is the stress, and the price is never feeling good enough, right? And that fear of failure. So I started wondering, can I keep the good of perfectionism, right? The striving for excellence, the having high standards for myself and others, the wanting to make a positive impact. Can I keep the good, but get rid of the bad, right? And that's when I came up with this concept of being better than perfect. Better than perfect. Turn to the person next to you and say, you are better than perfect. Person over there is like, I am. It's good, it's good. So what is better than perfect? Well, better than perfect is based on my book, Better Than Perfect, 7 Strategies to Crush Your Inner Critic and Create a Life You Love. And when the book first came out, I did a media tour, and one of the interviews was on the Today Show. And right before we go live in front of, I don't know what, 4 or 5 million people, right? Kathy Lee Gifford is reading the teleprompter, and she whips her head and glares at me, and she says, better than perfect. Better than perfect. I spent my whole life trying to be perfect, and now I've got to be better than perfect. But better than perfect is really less stress than perfectionism, right? When you're better than perfect, you still keep that strive for excellence and the high standards. But this is going to hurt some of you. Don't take it personally, okay? But you also accept that you're human. You're human, right? And we all make mistakes, right? So what we want to do is to really embrace who we are. I have a saying, it's not failure, it's data. It's not failure, it's data. Data just means information. When you get an outcome you don't want, instead of beating yourself up, ask yourself, why? What were the ingredients that went into this? How can I change it now? How could I change it in the future? How can I teach someone else not to have this mistake, right? It's not failure, it's data. So one of the ways that I want to help you enhance your passion and feel better than perfect is to identify something that you're proud of. And you're going to turn to the person next to you, who we already know is better than perfect, and I want you to share with them one thing that you're proud of, okay? One thing that you're proud of. You're going to go, then your partner's going to go. We're going to do about 30 seconds total. Go. What are you proud of? Make sure you both get a chance. All right, great. For how many of you was that a little awkward or a little uncomfortable? Raise your hand. Yeah. And why is that? Why is that? I didn't want to boast, right? I don't want to boast about myself. Great example of perfectionism, right? I don't want to boast and tell people about how awesome I am and be egocentric, so I'm not going to say anything. Is there anything in between, right? That's being better than perfect. This is a fun exercise to do with your team at a family dinner or when you're out with friends. Talk about this, because how often do we talk about the crap that's going on in our lives, right? And what's wrong. But asking people, what are you proud of, really changes that conversation, and it brings us into a state of passion. Okay, so remember the true success formula is passion, it's purpose, and it's people. So we're gonna go to purpose. Purpose, having meaning in life. It is human nature to want to have purpose and meaning in our lives. Your purpose has to do with how you spend your resources, your time, your money, your energy. There was a study a while ago that it just happened to be with nurses, and what they did was they asked the nurses to document every 15 minutes how they were spending their time. And the study was supposed to go on for weeks, but they ended up stopping it shortly because the nurses became almost depressed. And the reason why they became almost depressed is because they were looking at how they were spending their time, and they were comparing it with what was important to them, and there was no relationship, right? When we use our resources in a meaningful way, that helps us have a sense of purpose. Purpose can be created using experiences, growth, and contribution. Experiences, what are you doing? Right? Are you spending 8 hours watching Netflix over and over and over and over again? If so, your purpose may not be that strong. And it's not that fulfilling, unless it's a really good show, but that's another conversation. How are you spending your time? Growth. Perhaps you've heard the quote, if you aren't growing, you're dying. Right? It's human nature to want to grow, to want to expand. And I don't mean the way that a lot of Americans do in terms of growth of the pant size. I'm talking about within you. So what are you doing to grow? Maybe it's learning something new, a new language, a new skill. Maybe it's having a goal. Like if you don't run, maybe you're going to have a goal for, to run a 5K or something like that. But giving yourself opportunities to really grow. And then contribution. Contributing to a cause greater than yourself, right? And it doesn't have to take up a whole lot of time or energy, but how are you contributing to a cause greater than yourself? Whether it be other people, animals, the environment, whatever it is. When you do that, you're gonna have more meaning and more purpose in your life. And then how you view yourself, right? How you view yourself. Remember, what goes on up here impacts what goes on out here. Now, when I talk about purpose, sometimes people are like, I don't know my purpose. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little exercise to help you figure out what your purpose may be. And remember, when we're talking about purpose, it doesn't have to be this like global thing. It could be your purpose right here and right now. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to identify someone who you admire, someone you look up to, right? It may be a famous figure, maybe a fictional character, maybe even someone in this room, right? So just come up with that person. You got them in your mind? Now, what are 3 things that you admire about them? Maybe it's their sense of humor, their sense of compassion, their tenacity, their resiliency. Just jot down 3 things that you admire about that person. I don't know. Just anything. Just jot it down. It's good. Now, here's the beauty. Those characteristics that you wrote down that you admire in someone else are also characteristics that you admire in yourself. So good. I'm going to say it again. What we admire in others, we admire in ourselves. And the beauty is you already have this within you. You may need to dust it off a little, but it's already in you. So now I want you to choose one. Choose one of those characteristics. Perfectionists are like, which one? It doesn't matter. Just pick one. And then ask yourself, how can I apply this characteristic today or even this week? So if you wrote down tenacity, for example, maybe you're going to stop procrastinating on that project you've been avoiding, right, and start tackling it, even if it's just for 15 minutes. If you chose compassion, maybe you're going to pick up your phone and call or text or, depending on your age, Snapchat, someone who's going through a tough time, just reaching out. And remember, it does not have to be perfect. So if you chose compassion, you don't have to quit your job, move to Africa, and build water wells for 3 months, right? It could be something as simple as looking at the barista in the eye and sincerely saying thank you when you get your coffee. It's that easy. So what are you going to do today or this week to apply this characteristic? Because when you do, it helps you have more purpose in your life. All right, true success formula is passion, is purpose, and it is, oh my gosh, you guys are listening. It's so great. People, we are social beings, right? How we interact with others really impacts how we feel what we do. And of course, as leaders, what do we lead? Not sheep, we aren't shepherds, right? We're leading people. So when we talk about people, I have a question for you. Do you ever wonder why people do what they do? And I realize that all these pictures are men. I didn't mean it to, it's just there are so many to choose from. So what I'd like to do with you now is share with you a principle that I have created after working with clients for over 20 years that will help you understand why people do what they do. Because as a leader, in order to lead someone, we have to understand their motivation so that we can get them to work towards a common goal, right? So the over-under principle goes like this. For every overt or outward behavior, there's a positive, keyword being positive underlying motivation. So do that with me in the hand gestures, ready? For every overt, right now. There you go. For every overt behavior, outward behavior, there's a positive underlying motivation. Now, in order to understand this principle, it's easier to look at our own behaviors. So, how many of you have ever done something that really broke a rule? Or done something that upset someone else? Or done something that later on you thought, that maybe wasn't the smartest idea? How many of you have ever done that? One guy's like, 2 arms, yeah. Yeah, we all have, right? Because we're human. So, for example, how many of you, and there's no police here, so it's okay to say, how many of you have ever exceeded the speed limit? I know, it's so naughty. Why do you exceed the speed limit? Because you're a hard criminal? Because you don't care about rules? No, why do you speed? Because you don't want to be late, right? How many of you would agree that not wanting to be late is a positive motivation? That doesn't mean it's okay to do. Don't get pulled over and be like, Dr. E said it was okay. But we have a positive underlying motivation. The other day, I came home. I'd been traveling last week. I went to Denver and Dallas to speak. And before I left, I told my 13 and 15-year-old daughters, please put your laundry away before I get home. 4 days. They had 4 days. Friday night comes, and guess what's sitting on the dryer? Now, I would love to tell you that I pulled them both aside and calmly said, girls. But I didn't. I may have spoken in, let's say, a rather passionate tone, right? I was a little short-tempered with them, right? Why? Because I want my girls to be empowered, right? I want them to take responsibility. I want them to grow up not just putting away their laundry, but being responsible for themselves. And I'm very passionate about that. So even though the way I said it may not have been the greatest thing. My underlying motivation was to help them be responsible. Does that make sense? So when it comes to the over-under principle, when we are doing the behavior, we focus on our underlying motivation. I just didn't want to be late, right? I was just helping you be responsible. But the person who's watching us focuses on the overt behavior. Ma'am, you're speeding, I have to give you a ticket, right? Or my girls, Mom, you didn't speak very nice to us, okay? So we focus on our own motivation when we're engaging in the behavior, but the other person is focused on what we do or say. And so we're not having the same conversation. We're not having the same conversation. So let's look at someone else's behavior. When I was early on in my training, I had a supervisor who I adored, and he gave me more work than anyone else. Right? He had me doing research and writing articles and interviewing people, and he just kept piling it on and on and on and on. And it got to the point where it was overwhelming. And my interpretation of his overt behavior was, he doesn't care. He doesn't care that I have a life, right? He doesn't care, he just wants me to be his workhorse. And it got so bad that I thought about leaving this position. So instead I went in and had a conversation with him. It was one of those conversations where the tears are coming, and you're trying to stuff them back in, but they're coming out, you know what I mean? You're like, stay in! So I'm having this conversation with him, and I'm like, you give me so much work, and you don't give it to everyone else, and I don't understand. And he looked at me, and he said, Elizabeth, the reason why I give you all of that is because I can see the potential in you. I'm giving you opportunities that the other psychologists aren't getting. Writing articles, getting published. I see so much in you, and I want you to be successful. That's why I'm doing this. Wow. I didn't realize that. So here's the beauty of the over-under principle. When we're looking at someone else's behavior, right, we're focusing on what they're doing or saying. They're focused on the underlying motivation. We're not having the same conversation. So what we need to do when we're looking at someone else's behavior is to first and foremost empathize with their underlying motivation. How many of you have ever done something or said something and someone was upset and you're like, but I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I didn't mean that to happen, right? Because we're focused on our underlying motivation. When we're upset at what someone else is doing, we have to first empathize with where they are. I appreciate that you want me to be successful. I'm insanely honored that you see that potential in me. And I can't continue like this. And so because of that conversation, because I was able to understand why he was doing what we were doing, then we were able to prioritize what was going on. Right? And that's the beauty of the over-under principle. When we understand why people are doing what they're doing, it doesn't make their behavior okay, but it allows us to stay with that motivation and help them find other ways to apply that motivation. For example, how many of you have ever, maybe at work, you have someone who puts other people down, right? Or you know that egocentric person who loves to tell you how great they are? Do you know what college I went to? Right? How many of you have anyone like that at work or in your personal life who either puts other people down or loves to brag? Yeah, we all probably do. So that's the overt behavior. Why do people do that? They want to feel good about themselves. How many of you would agree that wanting to feel good about yourself is a positive underlying motivation? It doesn't make the behavior okay, right? But as a leader, if we can see someone doing that and understand why they're doing what they're doing, then we can redirect them. And we can help them believe in themselves without putting other people down, right? People put other people down to feel better about themselves. But when they have passion and they have purpose, they don't have to do that. Right? So as a leader, acknowledging why people are doing things that you don't necessarily want them to, and then figure out a better way to address that underlying motivation in a way that's more conducive and more effective. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. So, true success formula. That's what we talked about today, right? Passion. Enhancing your passion. Being better than perfect. Purpose. That one thing. You're going to do that one thing that you wrote down. And people. Applying the over-under principle. Okay? Now, I mentioned at the beginning that my goal for you, hopefully, is to enjoy my talk, but really it's to continue this process, to continue the rewiring process. But how do you do that? I was interviewed on a Facebook Live today, and the question was, how do I control my inner critic? Well, it's an antidote, and I'm going to share that antidote with you. So, what I'd like you to do is pull out your phone and text antidote to this number. 678-506-754. I really hope that's the right number, don't you? And what you will get is a 21-day program for free. Takes a couple minutes a day, that's it. You can do it while you're brushing your teeth, while you're driving, to work, while you're walking the dog, whatever you're doing. That will help you continue to rewire your brain. Because you deserve to be an even stronger leader for yourself and for the people around you. Okay, this is a great example of being better than perfect. Okay, let's try this. How about y'all go to my Instagram? If you like me on Instagram, then I will make sure that my team gets you the correct number. How will I know? Because you're doing it right now, that's why. I am you, we'll get you that information. Because it's good stuff, it's really good stuff, you're gonna like it. Say again? Oh, it's right there, Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo, I think. I don't know. I spend so much time promoting my Facebook, and now I got Instagram. It's like, it's overwhelming to me. Did that work? See, this is this is why Better Than Perfect is so great, because the old me would have been like, oh my gosh, I totally messed up, and well, it's better than perfect. Well, I'll get you the information, do not worry. Dr. E. Lombardo. God, she doesn't even know what her Instagram handle is? What is going on? Thought she had a PhD, God. Okay, we can figure this out later. My time with you is ending. Not yet, though. I want to share with you an experience I had. Several months ago, I went to a workshop. I was not presenting at the workshop. I was actually participating in the workshop. I was in the audience. And the workshop was on the power of focus. The power of focus. And I didn't realize until I got to the workshop that the person who was giving the workshop was a third-degree black belt. And towards the end of the workshop, she pulls out a plank of wood, and she informs us that we're all going to karate chop through a piece of wood. And she says, it's not about strength, it's not about hand placement or velocity, it's all about focus. So we line up one by one to karate chop through this piece of wood. Right? And the first person gets up, totally focused, and slice. Hand glides right through. It was incredible. Second person gets up, completely focused, and slice. Third person gets up and fails to slice right through. So she leaves a few moments later with a bruised hand and a bruised ego. And I'm up next. And I got to tell you, my inner critic was shouting rather loudly. And I got all my colleagues there. I'm like, oh my God, don't like stubborn. And I walk up, and I had no idea this was happening, right? So I am literally wearing a dress and heels. So I go up in front of this piece of wood, and I am focused. I'm focused. I'm so focused on this plank of wood. I don't hear the cheering around me. Have you ever been so focused, you don't even hear what's going on around you? Yeah, so I'm so focused on this plank of wood. I'm so focused, slice. Except it wasn't my hand slicing through the plank of wood. It was a rip up the back of my dress. Yes. Joe saw a little more of me that day than he wanted to. How many of you you have ever karate chopped through a plank of wood? What did I do wrong? I focused on the wood. You don't focus on where you want to stop. You don't want to focus on the obstacle. You want to focus on where you want to go, right? So a friend of mine, Anne, knows I'm not going to let a little wardrobe malfunction interfere with me executing this task. So she gives me her jacket to tie around my waist. And this time, approaching the plank of wood, my focus isn't on the wood itself, but it's past the wood, right? And with that focus, I was able to karate chop right through and proceeded to run right upstairs and change before getting arrested for indecent exposure. Why do I share this embarrassing story with you? Because really, effective leadership is all about focus, right? Are you going to focus on your inner critic? Or are you going to focus on being better than perfect? Or are you going to focus on what's wrong? Or are you going to focus on what you want to create? Are you going to focus on all of the challenges that you're presented with? Or are you going to try to apply the true success principle of passion, purpose, and people? And my hope is that you will choose the latter. Thank you very much.